On March 8th of 2025, my mom gave me her old sewing machine, and what has happened in the last 5 months has taken over my entire life and become my personality, because nothing will prepare you for the ego trip that is someone coming up to you, complimenting your outfit, and you getting to say, I made this. Seriously, I have never gotten this much positive feedback in my entire life. I have gone from complete beginner, I have no idea what I'm doing, I don't know what any of the patterns are saying or talking about when they say bias tape or stay stitch, to actually self-drafting some things and doing things like collars and pants and fitted skirts and zippers and buttonhole, even some purses. I have been so in love. And if the sewing bug has bit any of you guys, I have a feeling that you could relate. Let me know in the comments how your sewing journey is going, or if this video convinces you to get started, because I went from having a wardrobe full of, I'm ashamed to admit, Shein plastic bags that I would put on my body, because that's what it felt like. I live in Austin, Texas. It's a bajillion degrees outside, and I was so sick of feeling like I was going outside and sweating in toxic, gross fabric. And I also have experienced some body changes in the last year, and sewing has just been such a coming back to self, and it's been such an encouraging part of my life that here we are. I don't think I need any more explanation. Let's get into the little try on, pattern review, giving you my recommendations, as well as telling you about some mistakes that sewing besties can avoid, hopefully, if you listen to this video. So let's get started. Okay, I've got 34 pieces to show you, including 5 fails right at the beginning that I cannot wear. And I do think that I'm gonna share some things that would help you avoid that and have something wearable right away. And then 8 things that I have made for friends that are now happily in their wardrobe. So you'll see some very cute B-roll of them modeling those. And then all the rest of these 34 items that I have here. So first things first, like I said, the mistakes. For some reason, my very first impulse upon getting my sewing machine and being able to sew now, I was like, I'm just gonna self-draft. I don't need any patterns. I just wanna go with the flow, design something myself. But I decided to try to self-draft a turtleneck with gathered stitch and a V in the back, which I now know how to do, but back then I didn't know how to finish the bottom of a V. And I really applaud the effort here. But the thing is, this just didn't fit me without a dart. It was really gaping in the armholes, and it was just so frustrating. I didn't know how to fix the gape, and now I'm learning how to do darts. But that made it to where I didn't finish this project. But even more ambitious was a matching wrap skirt. That the vision here was to create like a flamenco skirt that I was gonna go like this, and then like somehow have some kind of clasp or tie that would allow me to just do this, and I could keep a ruffle and maybe have some kind of underskirt or tack it down just a bit. And I think the vision, 10 out of 10. Execution, I wasn't ready yet. I think I could have saved myself a lot of frustration by just going with a pattern first. So did I learn the first time? No, we have one more fail. So then I took one of my cheap wrap skirts that has darts in the back, and I tried to self-draft again, just using that skirt. I wanted to have a wrap skirt with a bow right here, and I think I was getting a little closer, but at this point I started to realize that I was not confident that even after I put in all this work, I would want to wear that item. And it would have all been fixed if I just chose a trustworthy source to buy a pattern from, and I could more predictably have an end result that was good. So that's what caused me to finally buy a pattern, but I bought AI generated crap that is all over Etsy that I did not know this was a trap that you could fall into. This vest does not at all match the AI generated photo. I'll put it in here for the pattern. And it ended up being a joke on sizing. It was way too big. It was way too long. I also chose the wrong fabric. I should have chosen a knit based on the pattern, but I chose stiff fabric, and I tried to remedy it by taking up the top and the sides, but based on the construction method, it is fully encased and it's not easy to take up the sleeves after you do it. And all in all, this ended up being a really frustrating project where I started to question my choices. And I have since moved on to realize I have a new rule. Never ever buy a sewing pattern on Etsy that is less than $8. It could be $6 if it's something really simple like a bag, like some reputable sewing pattern creators have. Sorry, I'm laughing at a lizard on my fence that's like doing that crazy like push-up move. But I realized that some reputable sewing pattern creators, they have patterns for $6, but it's for something simple like a very simple skirt or something that could basically be DIY. But if you follow that rule of I'm only buying patterns that are between $8 and $20, you can guarantee that you are not selecting an AI generated pattern. Also, obviously, don't select patterns that obviously have no photos of real humans in the pattern, because I promise you, that's not just, oh, they saved some time on not choosing a model or whatever. They genuinely have not pattern tested. The sizes are going to be completely unpredictable. You are going to get a garment that does not look at all like what was advertised. So this is the very first shirt that we're moving into the territory of I have picked a pattern off of Etsy that has a real human and good reviews on the shop. I think all of her patterns are really good, but they're 2 sizes too big. I went through all of the work to say, okay, finally, I'm gonna make something that I could really wear. But then I try it on and my heart just completely sank because it was so big, it was unwearable, it looked terribly boxy. And if I had just sized it down 2 sizes, it would have fit me really well. I'll probably eventually make it again in the proper size. I selected the size recommended based on my measurements very accurately, but the items of clothing that I've made from her, which I have been several, because I ended up, after I just started sizing down to, I ended up really enjoying her patterns. But it was just sad to go through all this and be like, ah, can't wear it. But it is so cute with the bow neckline, and I did a cute lining, and the open back is fun. So even though I did end up bringing it up and reducing some length right here, and I think also reducing it on the sides, it just also at that point was too late because the darts were set. So I gave up on that one and treated it as a lesson learned. But here is where we go into, I love these clothes and I wear them all the time. So this is the next thing that I made. It's also from the same pattern designer that I'll have up on the screen. I love these shirts so much. It's very much my style. I really enjoy something sleeveless, but more of a high neck. That's just for me personally, my kryptonite. And I loved these tops so much that I made 3 of them in a row. Again, if you size down 1 or 2, I think that you'll be really successful with this pattern designer. This is probably my most worn item or type of shirt, especially since I live in a warm climate. But yeah, you could do something fun with the lining. Yeah, heck yeah on these. I love them so much. Now I go on to my most beloved pattern ever. This is the pattern that has gone completely viral. I am obsessed with Sydney Graham. She is my sewing hero. Sewing hero, you hear that? If you watch this, oh my gosh, dreams come true. I love your lane pants so much. It's so easy to sew. Since my mom I grew up watching her sew, she would often say things like, oh, pants and shorts are really hard to sew. So I was intimidated by them, but I realized actually that this is one of the easiest projects ever, especially because you're not likely to get the sizing wrong. Sydney Graham is the most thorough and helpful instruction maker of any pattern maker I have to date experienced. And her patterns are a pretty easy yes for me in terms of buying them. But it's easy because it has an elastic waist. These are basically, as she says, wearable pajamas. And I made this out of scrap fabric. Or not scrap fabric, this is a lot for a scrap fabric, but it was in my mom's stash that she gave me as a starter. I'm not sure where it's from. All the others, sorry, I haven't mentioned it yet, were from the Joann's, except for these that were thrifted. These were all Joann's going out of business sale, which felt so sad to be begin my sewing journey at a time when they had just that week I believe around that week, announced they're going out of business. I have so many childhood memories of going into Joann's beforehand so my mom could pick out fabric for making us Christmas dresses and things like that. So I was counting on them still being in business, but I don't know if I cleared them out, but they sure cleared me out in terms of budget by how much fabric I bought in their going out of business sale. So this is where I just realized I'm addicted to making these pants. So I made another one, and this fabric is from Hobby Lobby. And I also made a matching top. This is again from that same pattern designer that does, I think it's Loveless Jamie. I'm sorry, I should have just mentioned it. Loveless Jamie on Etsy. She has this, what is it? I think it's the Nina top, the Megan top, this one, and then the Taylor top. It has a lot of different sleeve options. You could do a spaghetti strap, you could do a bow tie, you could do a stick bow tie, thin bow tie, or just thick straps like I did for this one. Let me first say that I think that matching sets are the cutest thing of all time. It is basically another huge reason that I wanted to start sewing is because I wanted matching clothing sets. I think that style is really cool. My husband thinks it looks like pajamas. We can't agree on everything. And yeah. So with this, I did make some modifications to this pattern. I really, because of my hourglass body shape, really prefer my waist to be defined. And this was a very loose, boxy top. So what I did was I included an elastic on the bottom. So all I did was cut an elastic the length that I wanted it, that fit well on my waist. And then I just tacked it on and stretched it out and sewed it along the bottom. It was what I call chaos sewing, which is not the most neat and organized. I could have encased the elastic so I could replace it later. But at this point you might experience this if you've done any sewing projects. When you're just done and you just want to wear your outfit already and you're done with your true crime podcast and you're like, I also want to be done with sewing. So chaos sewing ensued, and I just did that, and I'm really happy with it, actually. Okay, now I think it's time to introduce some of the projects that I started doing for friends at this point, because once I started wearing this shirt, which was my very first wearable make, I immediately got people asking, oh my gosh, can you sew me this or that or whatever? And one of the most special projects that I got to do was something, oh my gosh, it made me cry. My friend Mary Carlisle, her really beloved grandmother had passed away, and she inherited one of her grandma's just best sweaters that she was known for wearing. But for my friend, it wasn't quite comfortable or fitting for her. And so she still wanted to keep it with her, but change it into a pillow that could be proudly displayed in her new office and this new job that she had just gotten. And it was so special to get to sew this. I made it to where it would look like it was still a sweater with the buttons in the center of the pillow. And we both cried. As I was cutting the sweater, I was like, whoa, this is a lot. But I was really honored to get to do that project. So that was my first home good item. And the next thing that I made actually for my twin sister, because she was like, you know what? I want to get in on this custom outfit thing. If I pick out the fabric, can you make me exactly what I want? And I was like, if we could find a pattern for it, yes. My self-drafting skills were at a 0 at that point, obviously. And so I ended up making her this same style top and the lane pants just cut into shorts, which it was my mistake. I didn't realize that it's not best to just reduce the length. You actually have to make a few other modifications. I forget exactly what it's called, but basically this crotch part needs a little bit less fabric. So I just made do, but I could tell that there was some bunching. And only after I finished the project did I realize that Sydney Graham had on her YouTube channel already filmed a pattern to hack tutorial of how to change her lane pants pattern into shorts. But Kirsten was still really happy with the outfit and she looks so cute. Then I came to a part in this last spring where I was about to go on a trip to Chicago with my beloved Mr. Kevin, and I experienced what many girls say is the pre-trip I need a new outfit craving. And I didn't need just a new outfit. I wanted a whole wardrobe for the weekend that we were going to be there. And so that's when I sewed this. And I also decided I wanted to sew a tiered skirt, which ironically I didn't end up wearing because I made it. I was like, this looks like Little House on the Prairie, not like going to Chicago. So I was like, I'll wear this in Texas. But I learned a lot. I would actually like to, I know that there's a lot of DIY tutorials, and it is nice on YouTube that you could find DIY sewing tutorials where you don't actually need to buy a pattern. They'll just give you a self-drafting math equation of like your waist times 1.5 and then that times 1.5, blah, blah, blah for all the tiers. And there's a lot of tutorials like that, but I actually am thinking about making my own tutorial for you guys with the modifications that I made to that, plus 3 style upgrades where you could use those tips to make a really nice designer kind of looking thing with like more ruffles or other details that other tutorials I've seen don't have. So I will say, I think that the measurements on this were off. This is why I want to film my own tutorial, because it ended up looking like huge antebellum skirt. And I incinerated it in the dryer and it is now my size. I love that you could do that. Although I do recommend pre-washing and drying your fabric before sewing with it. I didn't do that. I usually do it, but I didn't with this. I got impatient, and I am glad that there was some wiggle room to go down a size, because whether I like it or not, I had to do that. And then it shrunk so much in the length that I had to let out the hem. Okay, now we get into dress territory. I haven't mentioned this yet, but I definitely made this dress. This occasion was, I need a new Easter dress. I want to look so cute. So I was looking for the perfect sundress, and ultimately I have still felt frustrated on sundress patterns. I have found some more that I think are cool, but for me, I don't really like super baggy dresses, which a lot of patterns tend to go for more of that cottagecore style. I also don't really like puffy sleeves. My style is just a little bit different. I tend to like a fitted bodice with a flowy skirt for my body type, and I had a hard time finding that. But what I did find, I was really grateful, is all free tutorials. I didn't need a pattern for this, and this was a tutorial by Rosary Apparel. She's another YouTuber that I love watching. I love how at the beginning of every video she goes, "Hi, I'm Janelle," and I think she's so cute. This is a tutorial from her that I'll link below, where this was the first time that I ever tried shirring, which is a technique where you sew in elastic on your the under thread, which goes into your bobbin, is elasticated thread, and then you increase the tension on your machine so it gathers it together, and it is so fun. Obviously, I didn't get it perfect. There are some little snags and wrinkles here and there that aren't meant to be, but once I mastered it, I felt like this is where I was like, I'm a clothing designer now. No one can stop me, even though I very much was still using hand-holding instructions to get this done. One thing though, I will note about her sewing tutorials for both this dress and the next 2 that I'm about to show you is, I don't quite understand how this is, but I think the measurements are really off, at least for me. So for the shirring, I'll correct this in editing since I think that I need to go back and double check, but from memory, I'm fairly sure that this pattern was basically do 2 huge rectangles of fabric for your front and the back, and do it your circumference or your measurement maybe around your bust or your waist. That ended up being so big that this dress was unwearable if I didn't make some modifications. For my machine, first off, I came to realize, and this is why you should always do a test shirring piece to see how much your machine was able to shrink it. I think her machine maybe is just better than mine, most likely, and it was able to reduce the fabric length by half once she elasticated it. Mine, and that's after steaming as well, which scrunches it more. Mine, the most I could ever get it was reducing it by 40%. If it was a 10-inch piece of fabric, it would only go down to 6 inches, and I think hers would go down to 5 inches. And so that's why she was able to take her measurements of her body times 2, and I think I just did 1.6, and that made it a lot better. And I was fooled again on this next pattern from her, which I love this dress, but again, it's too much fabric. I started with too wide of measurements. And I would just note that if I had to go back and do it over again, I would change her math equation to be more like 1.5 or 1.6 my waist or bust or whatever reference measurement she was recommending, instead of ×2 plus more inches of fabric. But this dress did end up so cute. This fabric, I got it from Joann's, same with this white one, so it's not available anymore most likely. But I loved that this, instead of shirring, is actually just elasticated channels. So you sew a lining in there, and then you sew 1, 2 seams, and then you put elastic through it and it scrunches it. And you do that in 4 places, though I think that this is definitely customizable. You could possibly just take out this one or only do the top and the waist and see how that looks, though I think that would bubble quite a bit. And it was so fun. But one other thing that I learned is that if you do not match perfectly the length or the width, sorry, of this outside fabric with your lining fabric, your elasticated channels will get messed up. And so I ended up having to cut the lining fabric, and so that I could stretch. I think that if you watch the video, it'll make sense, but just be warned, make sure that your lining fabric and the main fabric are the exact same length or width. So the lining ended up a little messy, but the dress ended up very princessy and beautiful. Then once I felt like I got the hang of it, I was like, nothing can stop me. We're making it in green. And this dress, I get so many compliments on. Thank you so much, Rosary Apparel, for making this pattern, and especially DIY, so anybody can start it without having to buy a pattern. At this point, my sister asked me to make another project for her, so I sewed her a dress, and this was my first semi-successful self-drafted item where I just took a dress that she liked, and I tried to cut out pieces that were somewhat similar, and I'll put her picture or video here of her modeling it. But the thing is that again, I fell prey to not having a dart to fit her bust. And without that, I think that it just makes the armpits gape so much. And that is something that she really didn't like. And so if in the future, I would always put in darts, no matter how quick or casual of a project that I'm making for a dress or a top. And I'm learning more about how to do that. Thank you, YouTube. Another thing is, whenever I got stuck on sewing projects like learning a new skill like shirring, I have found that just using ChatGPT is so helpful, because I'm like, the threads are still loose, or the stitches are skipping or uneven, or it's not shrinking enough. What can I do? I have this exact sewing machine. I don't know what settings to put it on. It can be hard to Google or YouTube your exact sewing machine and find a tutorial for it. And I found that ChatGPT talking me through it and adapting instructions for settings has been such a helpful tool. So I definitely recommend some kind of AI chat tool to talk you through some of your sewing woes. That takes us to, I'm back to sewing for myself again after finishing that thing for Kirsten. And I try shorts for the first time. I really ended up enjoying this pattern so much. It is by Atelier Mimito. I'll definitely have it up on the screen, but her instructions were really good. I appreciated that these are a little bit longer of shorts. That's just what I prefer. Of course, you could adjust the length. This was the very first time that a pattern taught me how to, I guess the lane pant did as well, but you're going to use French seams on this, which fully encase all of the seams on the inside, so you have nothing raw, like no raw seams. Did I get sick of doing it? Yes. So therefore, did I do it on every seam? No. But this is an example of a seam that is fully encased. You could look up French seam if you'd like to learn how to do that, or just use this pattern. And then this is an example of an unfinished seam because I got really sick of doing this. And now, actually just this week, I got the serger my mom lent me. It's her serger, all threaded. So I'm gonna level up even more, baby. But I highly recommend this shorts pattern. It was very thoughtfully designed, and I really respect that pattern maker. It's time, I'm gonna breeze through this. It's another lane pant. I even have another one that I made for my sister that I'll have to mention, but this was the very first time that I sewed in drawstring. And so therefore it's the first time that I had to sew buttonholes, and it almost broke me. Let me just say, I was really scared to do things like zippers, buttonholes. Zippers did not end up being a big deal whatsoever. Shirring also wasn't really a big deal. Buttonholes ended up being so freaking annoying. But that's probably just my machine. I think it's just very much machine to machine. Mine kept on glitching. I have my mom's machine. That is a Juki. I'll put the model number on the screen here. And that's a really nice one, but I was still having a hard time with it. And then I also have a Brother model. I'll put the model on the screen, just their cheapest one that I got on Amazon. Wow, my mom's machine had to go in the shop for a little bit and I was too addicted to stop, so I just got a backup machine. I wanted to get also a sewing machine brand that is recognized and would allow for repairs at a lot of sewing machine repair shops. So I got a Brother one, and both of them were just strikeout, but ChatGPT talked me through it and calmed me down, and eventually I got it done. And now they're not such a big deal to me now that I have it all figured out. And again, this is a Joann fabric haul find. Cotton gauze, oh my gosh, it is the most elite pant material or clothing material in general if you live in a hot climate and want something that's a little bit less wrinkly than just pure linen. And so basically all of these are 100% cotton or cotton gauze or linen, except for this thrifted synthetic material, because that feels really good to me to wear. Okay, now I come to the craziest part in our journey together, where I am going to show you an item of clothing that came from an absolute fever dream and I don't wear outside unless I'm feeling totally over it. It is this. Do you see that? This is thrifted fabric, Joann's fabric, and a fabric from my mom's old stash. I looked it up and found that this is a fabric from 1992, and it is incredibly creepy kittens. That some of them have like little bow ties. It's cute. And yeah, what more needs to be said? Basically, I had an unexpected hospital visit and I was so bored sitting in the hospital for a while that I was like, I'm just so mad that this is like taking up my week and I just want to get back to sewing and I just want to comfort sew and I'm just going to make something crazy. And I think I had too much time with my creative juices and this is the result. So the pattern is by the Prairie Misfit and this is her play dress pattern. It's really cute, but I do think that her patterns are extremely different in that they are instruction light. They're very beginner friendly, but I do think that I would prefer if there was like an organized YouTube tutorial to go, sew along tutorial to go along with it. You have to go to her Instagram to a kind of a story highlight that has a bunch of other things in it to learn how to do certain things. But I figured it out, and I ran out of fabric on this back panel and did this extra detail it was cute. Mr. Kevin said that I could wear it outside as long as I'm not standing next to him. But he's usually extremely supportive of my sewing projects, but I think that this one broke him. And I also think that this extremely loose fit is just not so much for me, but I do wear this on my chore days around the house, just cleaning, and it's very comfortable and windy, and I love having it. I also have had so many compliments from girlfriends that are like, no, I think this is really flattering. But I think dudes are like, that's stuff that women tell each other to sabotage each other. I don't know. Vote below. We're coming to the final stretch here. This is the first time that I sewed a purse. This is from, I think, Faye Studio. I'll have it pictured here. And I love this purse so much. This is her mini slouchy pattern. This was the very first time that I encountered quilting and tried that out as a skill. I also got this really cute tag that I've begun to sew into my pieces. handmade by Kelsey Kemp in Austin, Texas. I got that off of Etsy. I'll link that seller's listing below if you want to get your own tags. And I just loved making this. I put a snap enclosure. However, the snap, I wasn't really able to find one that was strong enough. And because this purse is so shallow and very lightweight, I ended up feeling like my items, oftentimes when I put my purse down, would fall out. So when I made this for the second time for a friend, and I'll put hers in here. She is so good at modeling this purse and she's evangelized it to a bunch of her friends. I deepened the purse, I think by maybe an inch. And then I also put in a zipper in the middle. And it wasn't like neatly tucked in or anything. I just actually got a separating zipper. So it comes fully apart. A lot of zippers stay together at the bottom, but I got one that is fully separating. And then I just sewed it into the lining, one on one side and one on the other side, and called it a day. And she's really enjoying it. And I think that purse is a lot more functional. Quilting is so fun. I think I'm going to get into that next. Guys, final stretch. Okay, so I decided to just sew a little tube top with my new shirring skills. I felt like having a very meditative project where you're just sitting at the sewing machine for a few hours, like doing this. Because I think that sewing actually, ironically, is more cutting and measuring and pinning and ironing than actually sewing. And I just wanted to run my sewing machine for a while and get into a trance, and I did. So that was fun. I might add some straps to it though. I would just feel more comfortable with that. Okay, this one, I am obsessed with this pattern and wholeheartedly recommend this pattern maker, the Friday Pattern Company. They are just so awesome. I like their designs a lot and the instructions were really awesome. I love the pattern and it taught me some new skills. So this was the very first time that I sewed a collar, like a lapel collar specifically, and I did a little pocket in the front. I decided to shorten the pattern because again, I like that defined waist, so it floats right at my pants line. And there's also this cute gathering detail in the back. It was the first time I sewed sleeves. This is so enjoyable to make because you do some of the challenging stuff up front, and then there's this time, a point in the instructional sew along where she's like, it's all downhill from here and it's gonna be so easy. You're in Speed Town, like let's go. And it truly feels like that. And so I don't have to go into rage sewing or chaos sewing in the end. It's just easy and they don't save the frustrating part for last. And I loved making that so much, again, Joanne fabric, that I immediately wanted to make it again. This is a pattern for me of once I find a pattern that I like and I do it once, I felt like mastering it and applying all the things that I learned the first time again. And so I got this fabric that I'm obsessed with. This fabric, this is the first time that I got it from a specialty shop. That was so fun. When Kevin and I were visiting family in Minnesota, we went to this tiny little town. I forget what it's called, so I'll have to put it on the screen. And we went to this quilting fabric shop called One Old Loon. And we had a lovely conversation with the gal that works there. I got this fabric on sale. I also got some vintage looking Halloween fabric that is on an upcoming project that I'll do a sew along for here. For that trip to Minnesota, actually, it was for Kevin's cousin. I call him my cousin. I love him so much. Jacob's graduation party. And I love that kid with all my heart, and his sister Jade. Shout out to you guys, and Aunt Lori. I'll probably have to just put a picture here. But I was like, I want to give a gift from the heart. So I did the most psychotic thing I possibly could, and I sewed him a pencil case out of this cat fabric. So if he doesn't use it, I'm not offended, but I hope it gave him a laugh. Two more things left to mention that I have made for friends that I don't have with me is probably the make I have been most proud of is this amazing striped pants vest set for my twin sister, like I mentioned, Kirsten. And she was going to do a speech and she was going on this big trip. She's in Hungary right now for this very special event. All her stuff. You could actually see about it on her Instagram, Kirsten_the confident dancer. She's a ballet dancer. And she commissioned me to make the lane pant. Again, you're probably tired of hearing that from me, but truly it's the best most fun pattern to make I've ever had. And I just put the stripes, I shortened the pant a little bit, and then I put a large cuff of putting the stripes horizontally at the bottom, and really loved doing that. I also, for the vest, I used this was quite a bit of pattern hacking. I might actually come out with my own pattern if y'all are interested in that. It was based on the Marcella vest. I made this for myself as a test run. The Marcella vest is by Coraline Street. She's another YouTuber and pattern maker I love following so much. She's so cute, and I love the stuff that she makes. But her body type is, I think, a lot more straight, and mine is a lot more hourglass. And so I think for her and body types like her, these kind of vests of a crew neck, a little bit wider shoulder, and it goes down to the hip. Those like really trendy vests, I think look really good on her, and I learned that I do not think that they looked good on me. So I took her view A, because the pattern is really amazing. It comes with two different views. You could do a vest with ties, or you could do a vest with buttons. So for myself, before I made one for Kirsten, I did the view A with these ties. I don't think that I placed them quite correctly. I think I probably should have done 4. 5 are recommended in the pattern. I was a little too confident, so it gapes a little. And I brought it in so the shoulders weren't so wide, and I also shortened it quite a lot, so I felt like it was a little bit more wearable and flattering for me. But it was really fun. This was the very first time that I sewed something with princess seams, and that was just like a really big like milestone moment of it's so fun every single time that I collect a sewing skill. And it's really, I am so appreciative and grateful to the pattern makers that with each one of these, like I learned how to do a sleeve and a collar and pants and gathering with this and a necktie with that. It's just been really fun. So after I made that, I realized I really do think that V-necks are more flattering on me. So I adapted the pattern to be a V-neck. Again, this is view A with the ties. I also made it a little bit more slanted in the waist, and I brought in the cup size quite a lot. It was way too baggy for me. And the thing that I would change about this is I took a lot of the V from here. You'll have to look. I hope that you're not just listening to this. I took it from here, and then I took in the sleeve a little bit more. I think I would make the V next time shallower. And this is what I did for Kirsten's vest. The V a little bit more shallow, and then take in the shoulder more, because you'll see in my try on the way that the neckline is a little funny, because you could see how full the back is, full coverage, and then it has this angle that is not the most finished that it could have been for me. I changed the way I drafted that. But for Kirsten, I did the view B with the buttons, and I made the adjustments I just mentioned I would have done for myself. Once I started to get more confident with my self-drafting abilities, I bought another pattern by the Prairie Misfit. And I didn't mention this before, but another really unique thing about her patterns is that they are hand drawn. So they are uneven. I think that was like a little bit of a point of frustration for me. I do buy her patterns because they're like art and they're really cool. I like the concept of them, but I had to put tracing paper over her pattern to then cut and fold it and make sure that it was even. I lengthened it quite a bit because her dresses are very short. She's got some great legs, go queen. And what else did I do? I put darts in. Because again, remember that lesson I mentioned earlier is if I don't do darts to make more of a curved shape around my bust or to fit my bust, it flares out so hard at the armpits and you're basically just gonna see my tit anyway. So I chaos sewed those in there and I didn't do it very well. I sewed them in too far to all the way to, I was marking for my nibs. And I think that was a little bit too far because it created a cone boob shape, which is really flattering and confidence inducing. But I then realized that this pattern was really not a flattering shape for me. It ended up like bubbling around my hips and then going in. It could have been my mistake, but I am actually so glad that this pattern gave me the opportunity to create something that was totally me. I ended up cutting the pattern in. So instead of going around my hips, I rather just put this main fabric to where it looks like a straight line. And then I added Go Days. This was inspired by Sydney Graham's recent pattern launch of her Sandra skirt, I put in a Godet, which is just this little extra fabric insert, and it made it so much more flattering. It did an optical illusion to slim out my hips, and it made the skirt a little bit more full, which I tend to really have a preference for. I'm thinking about making some other modifications, and I changed it enough to where I do think that maybe a regular pattern in like a PDF format that people could print, because her patterns are really different. I'm thinking about making one. So if you'd be interested in that, I am going to have another sewing tutorial soon and maybe come out with a pattern so you can learn how to do godets and stuff. Oh my gosh. Are we at the end? This is wild. If you come to the end, I am just so grateful. I don't want to be cringe, but honestly, would you comment below? Because this is my first video and I have been eagerly awaiting this launching into a new life of sharing my love for sewing. I hope I'm doing okay at it. I promise I'm sure I'll get better over time. Last but not least, this pattern is by Sewing with Solana, a great YouTuber that I really love following. Her accent is so cute. And I have to say, this skirt that includes a zipper was way easier to make than I thought. This was so extremely gratifying as a project that I would almost say a ultra beginner can do it, because even the zipper was not as hard at all as I was thinking. And it came together so quickly, like more quickly than any of these other projects. So it fools you. Maybe this looks a little bit more complicated with the leg slit and the zipper and the fold over waistband and the more fitted look. I think beginner sewists tend to do something more baggy, which I think is fair because it's more forgiving if you mess up the sizing inevitably until you learn that skill. And it does have darts, which, by the way, can I just say, huge mistake that I kept on making, including with this pattern. A dart, you're not supposed to cut out that triangle from your fabric. You were supposed to keep that and fold your fabric so it tends. I think actually Kirsten was helping me and she was cutting it out. And when she did that, I was like, oh, but you can still sew the dart together even if you make that mistake. But it isn't ideal. And I just didn't realize how darts work in the beginning. So this ended up being extremely easy, like I said, but I will say I was actually sewing this for Kirsten, and I think that she's 2 or 3 sizes smaller than me. And this ended up fitting me perfectly. So I followed the size chart perfectly for Kirsten. And again, this ended up I can't remember, I think 2 sizes too big. So I'm glad it ended up fitting me. But I think if you were making this for yourself, that could be a real point of frustration that I think the sizing is not totally accurate and ends up a little big. I find that as I watch other people do videos like this, it's more common for a pattern to end up too big, unless you're doing this AI generated crap. It could end up too small, than true to size. Yeah, I don't know how much pattern testers she works with before she launches a pattern. That's one thing that I'm really, again, grateful to Sydney Graham about, is because I know that she gets 40 people to make her pattern and give her feedback before she launches it. So the sizes are more accurate and less frustrating. But overall, this skirt was a total slay, and I'm excited to make a lot more of them. That is the last 4 months and 3 weeks of my sewing adventure. And I think this is just the beginning. I think I am fully addicted, and let me know if there's any types of videos that y'all would like to see as I continue my sewing journey on here. Thanks for watching.